part 5 of our Ready to Run to Nitro Racer series. We just got done racing it a little while ago. We've got some upgrades to do, of which I think some of you know what we've got in store. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. So let's get to it. At the end of part 4, I showed you guys we had a screw back out that didn't have any Loctite. So I'm gonna go through really quickly and add some Loctite to those front screw areas. So on the side that did not back out, they are still Phillips screws, but there's a little 3M or M3 nut right here on the bottom of that screw. So it's not a nylock nut at all. So I'm gonna replace both of those steering knuckle screws with hex screws since I need to replace this one anyways. And then I'm gonna actually put on a little bit of longer screw so I can put a nylock M3 nut on the back side of all those, both of those. Oh yeah, that's not going anywhere now. I'm gonna check these big old cap heads. There's one on the bottom, one on the top on each side. Just gonna clean them up and reapply some Loctite. Okay, so that was 6 extra screws in the front end that we put some fresh Loctite on, plus some big old nylock nuts on the bottom of our steering knuckles. So these steering tie rod screws should never back out again. The next upgrade we're gonna do to the buggy are these shock boots. Now this was CJ Jellen's idea in our previous part 4 race video.
And then shock boots, protect the shock shafts so no mud or anything gets in there and ruins them.
Boots is a good idea because there's no boots on this thing.
No.
So these shock boots will go over the shocks, covering up the shock shafts. So these shock boots will help keep the shocks cleaner and operating smoother. One thing to note though, that these are a different shock boot than was recommended in that part 4. These are the IF W154 shock boots. These are what they call the long shock boots. I think the other shock boots that are kind of like accordion looking style, those would work just fine, but these ones are a little bit longer, I believe, and then you can just trim them with some scissors. So let's clean this guy up. Let's see how this is gonna look. I think it only needs like maybe 1/4 of an inch trimmed off. All right, I think that's good. Let's put the spring on, put our perch on. Awesome, 1 shock done, 3 to go. All right, the shock boots are on. They're not all that exciting. They're just black, kind of almost rubber balloons over the shock shafts. We have them front and rear. They go on there really easily, trimming the fronts a little bit because those are shorter shock shafts, but a good addition just to keep those shocks clean on the racetrack. Now for the really exciting part of this upgrade, this is something I've been wanting to add to this car for a while. They're brand new servos, but first I want to admit a boo-boo I made, an oopsies. So I talked about in a previous video that there was a back plate. This is the back plate that I was talking about, but it's not the right back plate. It is intended for this engine, but this back plate goes on underneath the pole starter. It's not meant to replace the pole starter. So because of that, I'm not gonna put that back plate on this engine. I'm just gonna leave the pole starter on here. Somebody in the comments asked about a back plate and I said, yeah, there's a back plate and it's on its way. So to you who asked about that back plate on the engine, I'm sorry, I made that mistake. So the servos, these are the ProTech 155Ts. These servos have a full aluminum case. They're high voltage, which is perfect because we're running a lipo in here. They have a lot of torque, they're fast, and they're gonna be great for this Nitro buggy. We have been using the Ready to Run servos in this car on a lipo, which is high voltage, even though these servos in the Ready to Run are not high voltage servos. They've been working all right, but they will eventually prematurely burn out. And quality servos last for years. These will last longer than this chassis will. So in the future, getting a new buggy, you can take these servos out of the car and put them in your new car, and they're gonna work just great. So the specs on these 155Ts at high voltage specs, we have 0.08 transit speed, and then our torque is 453 ounces. So we'll put one of these for our steering, and we're also gonna put one of these in the throttle and braking position. Now these aren't the really high-end ProTech servos, although these are really nice. These are a little bit down from the high-end 170 TBLs, which are really nice servos, but these are a little bit less expensive since these servos are such a great investment. Like I said, we can use these again in the future with other builds that we may do. Another thing to note about these servos is that they come with an aluminum horn. So we've been using a plastic servo horn on the steering position in this buggy, just the way it comes out of the box. So we'll be able to throw that aluminum horn on the steering, which will be a lot more durable than that stock horn. For the throttle horn, we're just gonna keep using the plastic throttle brake horn. So the first thing I'm gonna do here with these servo replacements is unplug the old ones from the receiver. Then we're gonna take the whole radio tray out of the buggy. Let's see. Is that it? Oh, I think it's loose. Oh man, my transponder's gotta come out. I attached the transponder to the chassis. Yeah, I gotta take it off. Dang it. So we can just set the car aside. To get the wires to pull through this radio box, I'm gonna have to take off this little transponder slash switch mount right here just to open up the hole. I wanna keep these little plates, or these little spacers that go on the servo. It just lifts the spacer up because you don't want the bottom of this servo resting on the chassis at all. The servo needs to be floating off of the chassis. Take these screws out. I'm gonna reuse these screws and in the trash. These servos are probably fine to use in something else. I'll probably take that servo out of the trash and give it to the lab for something. And the throttle servo, let's see. Get that wire out. Big old wire lead. Perfect. Oh, look at that. That is nice. That's such a nice servo. It's all nice and black stealth look. It's a little bit heavier. This servo is really light, extremely light. I'm gonna go get some M3 cap head screws to use on these servos. I wanted to use the stock Phillips, but they're not gonna fit. The heads here are just a little too big. The spline goes towards the back. Steering servo is in. Nice. I'm gonna take a little silver Sharpie and I'm just gonna mark the ends of the connectors. This one's the throttle, T for throttle. And then this one, I'm gonna put an S, as you guessed it. Kinda looks like a 5 for Johnny 5, Alive. Love that movie. Okay, so let's route these wires back in our radio box. This one goes like that. I think I put the throttle servo on backwards. The spline needs to go towards the back. I better go double check that. So I did put that throttle servo in backwards. It's an easy fix though. I'm just picking it up and turning it around. And boom, radio tray is done. It's all buttoned up. Just kind of stuck the transponder up there to get out of the way. It was just dangling around. I shouldn't have stuck it to the chassis. I should have attached it to the radio tray to begin with. So we just put this back in our car now. Our steering trim and throttle trim has been adjusted a little bit. I'm gonna put it back to 0. Okay. Let's fire the car up. Man, this transmitter is awesome. When they call it rugged, it really is. But using this little scroll dial to get to the menu sometimes, not having properly set endpoints is usually the #1 reason the servo burns out. That looks good. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's just silly. Get back here. All right, let's try the brakes. This car has been a great project to go through as a box stock ready to run. and then to slowly be converting it into this racer has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to video 6. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions on any of this stuff that we used, check out our links down below. If you have any questions, you can leave that down below for us as well. I'm Brett with AMain Hobbies. Thanks for watching.